Welcome to Quilt Snacks. I prepared some little pieces for you to do a little demo, a live demo. And I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I have 3 little fish blocks prepared, and I'm going to show you how I'm going to quilt that. So you see in the background here is the surf. And the surf is actually the quilt that was just released last weekend. And it has all the quilting on there, and I had so much fun quilting these little fish. I thought I would show you how I did it. Now you can see that the surf is mirror image again. The last Quilt Snacks, I actually figured out how to switch and mirror image everything, but guess what? Everybody thought I turned left-handed. So I decided that I was going to just keep it the way it is, because I'm going to have to turn my camera around so you can see my quilting, and I didn't want to mess anything up on that part. So yes, so we are going to quilt this little fish, and this little fish, and I'm going to use different quilting for each one. And I'm actually going to bring the surf over to my quilting area so I can kind of look at it and compare, and you guys can see how that works. And then also today I've done the pelican, and the pelican pattern is almost finished. It is waiting for its cover, and I have a feeling this one is going to be it. So I'm going to show you how to do an envelope finish on a pillow. It is the fastest pillow finish you could ever make. There is no hand stitching involved, and even measuring is pretty much approximate, because there's going to be overlapping pieces where you push the pillow form through. So let me put this back on here for later. And I wanted to show you this little pelican. Let me move it over here. This one is not top stitched, so you can see the difference. But isn't that a cool fabric here? My friend Debbie brought that to me from one of her quilt shop excursions, because sometimes I work so much on patterns I don't get out much. So let me put this back here also. And I'm taking the surf over to the quilting machine, and then I'm going to switch you around. I'm going to focus in on the quilting, and I'm actually going to make this a little bit bigger and turn this over here. So that's my little sample so I can see the different ones. And let me get started. I hope you guys can see. I'm going to make it kind of big. The idea I had was to use smaller fish so you can see the whole fish while I'm quilting it, but I can make it big enough for you to see, you know, the needle and everything. Okay, so let me scoot up here. Okay, so if you've just joined, this is Annette Ornelas from Southwind Designs, and I am doing a little quilting demo on the fish. And to me, it's all about scale and repetition, and maybe using some echo lines around the outside. So I'm just going to get started. Now, the thread that I have in here is a white thread. So I'm just going to use white thread for everything, because I think it's going to be fine, and you guys will be able to see it better. All right, so let me get started. Okay, here is one of the little fish. And here is the one that I've done. You can see in the little surf Quilt-Moji. And the first thing, actually, before I even start on the fish, I have this little piece of batting and everything that I use. And I always try out my quilting machine just to see if everything's okay, and, you know, if there's not a problem. So, okay, so far so good. And what I do is I check the back, and that's good too. And you can see that little blue triangle. That's a little scrap that is from my Pelican fabric. And so when I tried out my top stitching thread, I wanted to see how it actually looks. And so I just, right on the batting, put a little scrap there and sewed right over it so I can actually see what that looks like. It is different as opposed to just laying a thread on there. It is just a different look, and I feel like I can see better if it works. Okay, so back to the fish. Wrong fish. This is the first fish I was going to do, and it's all white thread. So the first thing I'm going to do is pull my bobbin thread up, and I'm going to pull it right up so I have both of them in my hand. That avoids to have these little, what I call bobbin vomit, but I don't know, other people might call it something else. So So I'm going to stitch in place, and when I have secured my thread, I'm just very gently just kind of moving over to the other side. Okay, so I'm going to clip my thread and get it out of the way. And all right, then I'm just going to go travel along here, and whether you're exactly on top of the thread before, it doesn't matter. As long as you're even and you're trying to maintain equal distances, it'll look just great. Okay, so I'm doing the same thing, and I'm kind of going again on that curve, just a few stitches. Now, have you ever noticed that your 1/4 inch, that's this foot right here, a lot of the feet that you have for your top stitching, this one, it's going to make like about a 1/4 inch line here, because the distance from the needle on the inside and the outside is just about 1/4 inch. So what I do a lot of times is I use the edge of the foot and I just kind of draw along the previous line of stitching. Okay, so I have 3 lines, and I thought, you know, that's probably enough for the fish, but I'm going to probably just pull my thread over to the other piece. And so here is the tail piece, and the tail piece I just did sort of a fan, so it's a straight one, and then I moved along that little curve. And that is a double curve that I did with a pin there. I had a pin in there, stitched to the pin, pulled it out and stitched on, but I'm going to show you that in another video. And so I'm just kind of riding along here, and I'm always coming to the point. So I've made this little fan shape, and I think I need one over here. So like I was telling you earlier, I think a lot of it is about how even you are, your scale, and inside these little fishes, the scale is fairly small, but when you get to the outside, I think it's easier to just do something that's a little more, you know, loose. So I'm going to just kind of do these curls. And as you see, I'm kind of going right out into the batting. That's fine with me. I don't really care, because I'm just going to trim it up later. Now, when you're doing a spiral, you have to be aware that if you're going to do a continuous spiral, that means you're going in the spiral and you're going out the spiral, as opposed to breaking the thread. You have to leave yourself some space to find your way out. And that means you should not go so tight that you don't, you know, have an even way to get out of it. Also, there's left and right spirals, and sometimes I try to be conscious and switch because I feel like it makes a more even pattern. But if you don't do it all the time, it's not that big a deal. So here I have some spirals, and I'm thinking maybe there's not another space here. There might be a little more space here. So I always kind of maintain the overview to see what's happening on my quilt, whether it's small or big. I always look at everything so things are more even, and that's one of the things. You have to have somewhat even distribution through the spacing of your quilting lines, and that's what kind of makes it look, you know, pleasing to the eye. So now that there's some holes here, I call them holes, they're not real holes, there's just no stitching here, all I do is echo. So this one, see how it wants to come up here? I want to make sure my foot is on top, so I just do a little tiny corner, and I'm echoing around some of these spirals, and if I feel I need more, I'm echoing around here. Now, I also showed you these before. These kind of help keep everything from sliding. If you have dry fingers, that's really kind of hard. Okay. And I have one more. Okay, so that one is done. Now that I've done that, oh, I hope we're not, I'm just going to pull it out and break the thread and go to the next little fish piece. So this little fish piece right here, I had on top of my serve right by the S, and all I really did for it was do little lines here, but it was so effective. I really liked it. When I did it, I thought to myself, well, let me do that for some of my other things too, because it worked really well. So the first thing I'm doing is down and up, lift my presser foot, pull on it, and that's what brings up the bobbin thread. And a couple of stitches. And I'm actually gonna try to clip this off before I get on and get it ready to go. So here's those little holder things again, and I'll find out the name. I keep forgetting the name. I think they're called something grippers. And so I'm just going to make a line parallel to the inside of that curve, come back out. And now you see, because I have a point that everything comes to, I'm sort of flaring the line open a little bit. So I'm maintaining the basic curve, but it's wider up here than it is down here. And again, I'm stitching. Now this one I actually left open, and I thought all I'm going to do is just to kind of go back and forth and just do a little fin there without it being curved, just something different. Okay, so now another way to kind of finish up your pieces is to do parallel lines. Now, if you do parallel lines and you make them all straight, then you almost have to draw them, because if anything's off, then it just looks sort of weird, like you did something wrong. But my parallel line usually is curvy, so it's not a problem. So I'm going to start here, and I'm actually going to do them on a diagonal. And you can do the same thing. You can do these lines with your regular presser foot, especially on a small thing, and you can do those parallel lines. You know, if you have a larger quilt, I would recommend a walking foot, but I'm just here, instead of resetting everything up, so I'm going to just do it here. So here's my first line, and I'm just going to go back and forth, kind of like what I did inside the fish, but more parallel and not so much flare. So they're all kind of organic. Now that I've come sort of across the front, the mouth of the fish, I went all the way on, and so that is something that anybody can do, really. And I'm going to have to go around this corner. Okay, so it's kind of easy to do it out here, but when you have the connection with the fish, I try to continue my line visually. Sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't, but it's always fun. So you see, I'm missing a whole bunch here, so I could either work my way around it, or, because this is faster, I'm just going to pull it and we're done. So the reason I picked the lines going in this direction is because I wanted them different from the lines in the fish, and that's what I was trying to tell you about, the variation. You have to create interest through the contrast and through the variation of your stitching, and that is just one way of doing that. And so the next little fish is done. I have one more little fish right here, and this little fish, it really doesn't need a lot of quilting because it already has a lot of piecing. But if I was going to use my regular presser foot, I would just probably, and I did on my quilt, let me look, yes, I just went right here in the ditch, and I always kind of look which side the bottom part is, what I call the valley, and the other side is for me kind of like a little mountain. So I always go in the ditch here, but it's a little bit difficult sometimes to maintain a straight line. So I thought, well, why don't I do something different? And so I have both my threads like I did before, stitch in place, and now I'm going to kind of do a wavy line, okay? And stitch along here and do the same wavy line. And let me do it here. Let me do a different angle. So not bad, huh? What do you think? So the last one, whoops, the last one is the yellow separation, and I'm going to try to go straight here and work my way around. And maybe it needs an eye. Okay, so let's see. What do you think? Yeah, it needed an eye. So this is that fishy, and now I think I'm going to do another line exercise, and I'm just going to pull my thread, and this one is going to be, see how many waves I put in there? And you can either make those waves parallel, or you can also make them straight, but I'm making them, because I wanted to have some bubbles in there, I'm making them sort of parallel. So here's another way to do a design. I'm making a couple of lines, and then when I feel it's right, I'm going to do a bubble. And it's okay to go around twice. It's totally fine. If you do more than one line, it makes it more than one line to separate the bubbles, I think gives it a little bit more character. So did you see each time there was a bump that went down, I did a little bubble in there. So, and going around. And then I have this area right here, so I think that I'm going to put a couple of bubbles in there. Okay, so what do you think? This is it right here. So I have 3 little fishes, and each one of them are done different, and the backgrounds are also done different. I think that, you know, kind of giving you some different ideas. That's my idea. And I'm going to probably take some pictures and maybe post them on Facebook, or maybe put them in a newsletter so you guys can kind of look at them and see how this all was created. So that was it for surf. So here's the Pelican Pillow, and here are the pieces that I've made. So I've cut a piece is about a 12-inch by, this is a 16-inch, so I knew I wanted it bigger than 16. I think I did 17, and maybe they're not even exactly the same, but it really doesn't matter. They're very close. This is not something that you're going to piece into anything, so it'll be just fine. What I did here is I did sort of a seam. I folded about a 1/2 inch or 3/4 inch down, and then rolled it and just top stitched it. Okay, so in order for this to be an envelope pillow, we're going to have to do an overlap. And here is the part that you have seamed, and so that's going to go on one side. Make sure that the whole pillow is covered. Can you see that? Yeah. And then I'm going to put this on the other side, and also making sure that the whole pillow is covered. Now, when you stitch all the way around, this should be fun because I'm using safety pins. When you stitch all the way around, then you can turn the whole pillow, and you have sort of an envelope that you can push a pillow form through. And then we're going to turn it and see what happens. Okay, so here's the envelope, and It looks kind of weird right now. And before I turned it, after I stitch it, I always clip the corners. Just easier to turn then and more orderly. But I'm going to turn this with the pins in. It's going to be a little messy, but I just want to give you the idea of how it works. And then once everything is together, you can top stitch it, straighten it out, and then you have your little pocket envelope, so to speak, that you can push your pillow in. You push it in one way and then you pull this part underneath and you just tuck it in there, and it works really well. And that is the way you make an envelope pillow. And maybe I need to create, you know, like a montage with actual photos that are real so you can see how that works. But yeah, this right here is my sit-down machine, and I really love it. I used to teach machine quilting, the sit-down kind, and so for me, a long arm was kind of odd. So it ended up being a sit-down, and I have a lot of fun. Sometimes I don't have time, but when I do have time, that's, I think, one of my favorite things to do. Piecing and quilting. So yes. How large is the overlap on the pillow? Maybe 6 inches at the most, but you can keep it a little bit smaller. I found that I have it too small, then the pillow wants to kind of pop open and, you know, wants to kind of gap open there. So I want to make sure that it's probably about 4 or 5 up to 6 inches I have put pillows in. Now what you could do is on one side, before you even put it together, you could put a little piece of Velcro or even buttonholes and button and all that. And then, you know, it kind of keeps together even better. So, well, you know, what did you think about the quilting? Are you going to try it? I'd love to see some of your projects and what you're quilting on. And if you ever have any questions, you know, you can send me a picture and I'll be, you know, I'll try to answer all your questions. Yeah, you're very welcome, everybody. I hope you had a great time. And this is it for Quilt Snacks today. And I hope you guys have a great week. And I will see you in 2 weeks. Bye.